Entitled mother-in-law insisted my wife sleep with her sister's husband to give her a grandchild. My wife left me a note saying she's off to get pregnant, so I packed my stuff and ghosted her. Now she's begging for forgiveness. This story will be shared in several parts. I still don't know how many, but I was encouraged to write it after seeing a video on social media, TikTok, about a story that was very similar to mine. Without further ado, I decided to share my own story. I have posted this story on other subreddits, but I would like to know your opinion. It all began in 2014. My wife, Alina, was 27 years old at the time, while I was 26. We had been in a relationship for 5 years and married for 2. We met in college, she was studying accounting, and I was studying mechanical engineering. Our meeting took place at a party of a mutual friend, and we quickly connected. After a few dates, we became boyfriend and girlfriend, and we got married the following year. Alina had an older sister named Adriana, who was married to a friend of Alina's named Ariel. Alina's mother, Valentina, never accepted me. She tried to find many excuses to separate us, and I can say that she really discriminated against me and humiliated me every chance she got. She always said that Alina deserved something better. At that time, I thought my life was perfect. Alina was incredibly beautiful, the most stunning woman I had ever met. My salary as a mechanical engineer was decent, and we had agreed not to have children soon. First, we wanted to travel to some countries and finish paying for a house. Alina agreed with me. She became interested in studying for a master's degree, and I offered to pay for it. I always wanted her to feel comfortable with me, so you could say that I used to give in to my wife's requests. A year after we got married, Alina's mother suffered a fall that left her hospitalized for a couple of days. The doctors reported that it was nothing serious, but recommended bed rest. Alina was distraught about her mother and stayed with her. Time passed, and during the 30th wedding anniversary party of Alina's parents, 2 shocking announcements were made. Adriana had been struggling for 5 long years to have children, visiting fertility clinics without success. It was a heartbreaking situation for her to suffer in silence, grappling with that inability. Valentina's confession was the second shocking announcement. With a trembling voice and tears in her eyes, she expressed that she longed to become a grandmother. Her words, full of a sense of urgency, resonated deeply. "A fall could be the end of me, and who knows when it could happen," she said. I watched as Alina broke down emotionally upon hearing her mother's words. Upon returning home, my wife was noticeably affected by the weight of what had happened. I chose to ignore the situation, a mistake of mine that I did not want to face. But months passed without further news until I received an urgent call from Alina. Her voice reflected anguish as she explained that she was in the hospital. Alarmed, I asked, "Are you okay?" With fear in my voice, she replied that she was, but that she was there because Adriana had attempted self-harm. Adriana's inability to have children had plunged her into a deep depression, and Valentina's words, expressing her longing to be a grandmother, had been the trigger. Despair led her to try to end her life. As soon as I got off work, I rushed to the hospital to support my wife. I found Valentina there, her gaze cold and somewhat accusatory. Ariel, Giulio, Valentina's husband, and my wife were also there. I tried to understand the situation, and to some extent, Valentina blamed me for Adriana's self-harm attempt, according to her. Her desire to be a grandmother and Adriana's inability to give her a grandchild had led her to try to take her own life. The doctors released Adriana from the hospital 2 days later and prescribed her antidepressants. That same day, we had a family meeting where we revisited the topic of grandchildren. Regarding Adriana's infertility, I proposed the idea of adoption as a viable alternative. Both Adriana and Ariel could adopt without any difficulty, as they were adults with good incomes. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room. Valentina looked at me fixedly and rejected the idea, arguing that adopting a child was not the same as having a grandchild of their own blood. The conversation did not progress, and we returned home with a tense atmosphere. The weeks after that meeting became strange. Adriana and Ariel started visiting my house more often. I often heard them talking, but when they entered, they kept quiet. It seemed like strange behavior, although I decided not to pay much attention to it. Perhaps Adriana was simply going through a bad time and needed to be with her sister. On the other hand, Valentina's behavior changed. She became more reserved with her phone and distant with me. When I came home and tried to get close to her, she would pull away. In addition, our intimate life decreased. On July 5th, a day that I remember clearly, I came home from work and saw several cars parked in front of my house. I feared the worst. When I entered, I found my in-laws, my sister-in-law with her husband, and my wife in the living room. Their expressions indicated seriousness. Alina told me, "Sit down, we need to talk." I nodded and sat down. I tried to ask what was happening, but my mother-in-law interrupted me by asking, "What solution can you give us?" I remained silent. I did not understand what she was referring to. Then she added, "About my grandchildren." I tried to suggest in vitro fertilization, explaining how it worked. But I only found disgust on Valentina's face. In her old woman's expression, I noticed that she rejected my proposal and said, "I have another solution." Update: I left my wife because she got pregnant with her sister's husband. Part 2, Continuation. As I said that, I looked at Alina, confused, but she didn't look back at me. Instead, she looked at her sister and then her mother. I saw Adriana smiling while Ariel showed a haughty attitude. His smile turned mocking, looking at me with superiority. I kept silent and waited for Alina to say something. But she didn't speak, prolonging the silence. Suddenly, Alina shouted at me, "Idiot, say something." I didn't understand and kept silent. Then my mother-in-law tried to calm Alina down, speaking with a certain elegance. "As you know, dear, Adriana has been cursed with the impossibility of giving us grandchildren. That joy of motherhood that she cannot experience." Alina interrupted and explained that they had analyzed options, mentioning the risks of surrogacy and the possible genetic and hereditary problems that could arise generations later. Then Ariel added that surrogacy was expensive and that they could not afford it, in addition to the expenses that the baby would require. "So, what do you propose?" I asked. My mother-in-law's evil answer left me speechless. "Since you refuse to have children, Alina will become pregnant with Ariel." I swallowed hard, unable to utter a word, hoping it was a joke. However, my mother-in-law continued speaking. "We understand that you don't want to take care of the baby. Don't worry, when it is born, we will register it in the name of Adriana and Ariel." Then she mentioned, "Children are not products, they are not made in a laboratory. They must be conceived with love, the fruit of a couple, in other words, with coitus." She explained a series of religious arguments, citing the Church's prohibition and her desire to prevent her grandchild from being condemned to hell. Before my mother-in-law could continue, I stood up abruptly and shouted, "No way, I don't usually raise my voice, but I did on this occasion." "Alina, what do you want to tell me?" I asked my wife. I saw her expression change between confusion and fear. My mother-in-law looked at me defiantly, trying to explain to me, apparently thinking that I would not react this way. Ariel approached me, trying to put his hand on my shoulder, and I said, "Don't touch me." I was really upset. My mother-in-law insisted that she wanted a grandchild. It was then that I added, "Fine, I'll give her a grandchild. We'll try to conceive next week." My mother-in-law intervened again. "We respect your decision not to have children yet. I understand that you are young and still have the urge to explore. Therefore, Ariel will be the one to take care of it. Adriana agrees that her son should be conceived in the act of love. Therefore, it will be between Alina and Ariel." At these words, I shouted again, "You're crazy, old witch." Everyone was surprised at my response. My mother-in-law shed crocodile tears. Giulio approached her, and so did Adriana. Alina looked at me and shouted, asking me how I could say that. Ariel approached me, and I remember he said to me, "Come on, it will be fun." At that moment, I landed a punch so hard on Ariel's face that he fell to the ground. Update, Part 3. Adriana screamed, and Alina too. I shouted at them to leave my house and locked myself in the bedroom. I could hear some shouts and saw them leaving the house through the window. Minutes later, Alina entered, quite upset, complaining that I had offended her mother. She ignored the simple fact that they were trying to convince me that my wife had sex with another man. Alina did not speak to me all day. When I woke up, I found her in the kitchen. She looked like she had been crying. She called me immature for not understanding the situation and mentioned that my mother-in-law was in critical condition. I decided to ignore her and did not take her to the hospital. I told her to take a taxi and left. I returned home at night after spending the day with my best friend, Abraham. He supported me, saying it was a form of deception and that my mother-in-law was to blame. He suggested it might be a good idea to leave the city with my wife so we wouldn't be so close to her family. When I arrived home, I saw Alina. She had been crying. She told me that her mother was hospitalized and in critical condition. I told her that I cared little, and she collapsed. I felt sad and apologized. It was not my intention to hurt her. She only told me that her mother just wanted a grandchild. I mentioned that she could wait another year, but she said, "You don't understand, Adriana is still depressed. I fear she will attempt self-harm again." I kept silent and said, "Okay, we can try to have a child soon." That decision took me out of my own ideas. Don't get me wrong, I know that a child brings joy and happiness, but I was still young and wanted to travel. A child is a responsibility and can limit you when you lack the necessary maturity. In my opinion, being an adult is not the same as being mature. She looked at me, happy, smiled, and told me it was okay, that we would try. The days passed without incident, except for a change in Alina's attitude. Now, she didn't hide her phone and looked at me happily. Her mother apologized to me and said she understood my decision. According to medical orders, she should not be stressed or angry. I was surprised. I didn't expect that from her. Alina became more affectionate with me. I recognized that those months were quite interesting, but there was something strange. I didn't know what it was, but it was strange. 6 months later, I can say that I was more in love with Alina. I didn't know how, but somehow, I managed to give her what she asked for. If Alina wanted a new TV, I bought it for her. If Alina asked for a day at the spa, I gave it to her. Somehow, at that time, everything Alina did or said became my priority, and I did it to see her happy. I knew that my words and my attitude had hurt her, and I wanted to see her happy. Valentina no longer insisted on having grandchildren, and Adriana seemed to be better. I was happy for them, and I also had a surprise planned, something I had been saving for, a long vacation in Canada. I wanted to take Alina on vacation. All those previous stressful situations had been a lot, and I wanted to surprise her. I returned home from work on March 6 with the tickets ready to travel in 2 weeks. I arrived home and found the house empty. I went upstairs to the bedroom and found a note from Alina that said, "Louis, you see that nothing in our relationship changes. I love you more than ever, and I know you do too. My mother has become more affectionate with you, she appreciates you in her own way. However, Adriana cannot be happy, and I know that the guilt of not giving her a grandchild is destroying her. I hadn't told you, but I know you're going to understand. You've changed a lot in these months, and I know you're mature enough, and you love me too much. My parents, Adriana and Ariel will do what we planned 6 months ago. Today, we are leaving town. I will get pregnant by Ariel. I will not tell you where we are because I know you, and I should not suffer stressful situations, and neither should Ariel. Adriana told me that he gets nervous, and maybe we can't conceive on the first try. That's why we'll be gone for a month. Don't bother looking for us. I will return when I am pregnant. This does not change our relationship. We will pretend that nothing happened. No one in the family knows, and that's how it will stay just between us. Update. When I finished reading the note, I felt an overwhelming sadness and humiliation. I cried. I won't deny it. It had hurt me deeply, but I believe that in a marriage, there must be mutual agreement, and trust must be the foundation. Alina didn't care and walked all over me, along with her mother. The sadness I felt turned into indifference. 2 days later, I realized something. I hadn't known the persuasion techniques of some people. Both Alina and her mother persuaded me to see myself as the obedient husband who forgives everything, but even this I could not do. I would not let them walk all over me. I drove to Alina's parents' house, and as the note said, they were not there. I returned home, annoyed and humiliated. I told Abraham about the situation, and he gave me his support. We had a couple of beers, and he asked me what I would do. I didn't know how to answer, so I just said nothing. I tried to call Alina, and I was surprised to discover that she had left her phone at home. I knew she had done it on purpose, she always charged it. I checked her cell phone, and the conversations and messages with her family seemed normal, there was nothing unusual. That weekend did nothing but increase my hatred for her and her family. In short, my wife was repeatedly cheating on me with her brother-in-law, supposedly because he was nervous and couldn't conceive, which is nonsense in my opinion. I came up with a plan. I bought tickets to go to Canada and packed all my things. I had enough money saved to live for 3 months. In addition to that, I sold my car and asked Abraham for a loan. I told him I was going to Canada and would never come back. He said it was okay, and I just asked him to keep me informed about what happened. I took Alina's phone and left. Something I haven't told you is that I speak 2 languages fluently besides my native Spanish. I also understand English and German well, so understanding the language was not a problem. I quit my job and asked that they not contact me again, including my wife. In my 3rd week in Canada, there was a WhatsApp notification on Alina's phone. I opened the message and saw that it was from Alina's relatives.
Her sister, her mother, and her father, Ariel, were in a group chat named Baby. Adriana had sent a message that said, "It's finally happened, family. After more than 20 attempts, we will finally have a grandchild." Adriana shared a photo of Ariel smiling, a face I would never forget. My wife, Alina, was next to him in bed. I could see that she was in her underwear, and following that was a photo of a pregnancy test. Seeing my wife with Ariel filled me with sadness, but I was too far away and didn't want to see her again. Several messages from the family arrived, congratulating them on the news. 4 days later, I was looking for a job in Canada. Fortunately, my engineering knowledge and ability to speak 2 languages gave me the opportunity to start working in a small factory as a warehouse man. It wasn't much, but it paid well enough to survive. In fact, if you can get a job in Canada, don't let that opportunity pass by. A week after that, on a Sunday morning, I received a message from Alina on my phone that said, "Love, I'm home. Everything went well, and I'm pregnant. Come soon, I have something to tell you." I didn't respond to the message. I decided to ignore it. I spent the day in Toronto, walking in the park, until I received another message from Alina, "Darling, come home. We need to talk about this." I ignored Alina's message again. The messages continued to arrive, as well as calls that, of course, I did not answer. All afternoon, I received messages and calls from Alina, Adriana, Ariel, and that evil witch. The situation escalated and even involved my father. I received a call from him, quite worried, asking me where I was and if I was okay. I hadn't told him anything, so I simply responded by asking him who was calling. He told me that Alina was worried and had contacted him to see if I was with him. I explained the situation to my father. He seemed incredulous at first, but in the end, he believed me. I told my father that I would bring him with me as soon as I could and asked him to block my wife. My phone continued to be flooded with voicemails and calls. In one of those voicemail messages, Alina could be heard crying, "Love, please answer. Where are you? Come back. We need to talk about this for real." I simply ignored the messages, believing that my act of ignoring her was a message in itself. I turned off my phone for 15 days and got a new one in Canada. Technology can be cheap if you find good deals. I set my social media to private without removing Alina or her family, I just hid them. I acquired another phone to communicate with Abraham. He told me that Alina had gone to see him, but he didn't let her in. When she asked him where I was, he replied, "You could have asked him while you were fooling around with your brother-in-law," and then closed the door, threatening to call the police. He asked about me, and I told him I was fine, that Canada was a peaceful and prosperous country, thankfully not too cold. When I turned on my phone, I found over 100 messages on social media, and calls from Alina and her family. Most were from Alina, begging for forgiveness. "Louis, please, I still love you. This means nothing. I want to give you your first child. This is from my sister, Louis. Don't ignore me, please. Answer me, I love you." Her messages were filled with pleas and audio recordings of her crying and begging for forgiveness. There were also messages from my mother-in-law reproaching my attitude, saying I was irresponsible, and that my behavior could affect her grandchild. Alina was losing weight due to worry, and doctors had to hospitalize her for a nervous breakdown. I simply blocked my mother-in-law's number. That was during the first year. My father came to live with me, and he's doing well. Fortunately, I got a better job, and things are going well. Obtaining permanent residency in Canada was an achievement after hiring a good lawyer. Alina keeps sending messages. It turns out that, fortunately, the illegitimate child with her brother-in-law had no health issues, and I'm glad the baby is fine. He's not to blame for what happened, and I sincerely wish him to grow up healthy and happy. Alina cut ties with her family, blaming them for persuading and forcing her to have a child with Ariel. Despite everything, she keeps trying to find out where I am. I decided to break the silence. Every time she sends me messages, I simply respond with happy emojis in the face of her desperation. Although she tells me she still loves me, I believe that if she really loved me, she wouldn't have acted this way. She's tried in many ways to find out where I am, but only my friend Abraham knows. I decided to answer a video call from Alina that I received. I suppose I did it to know how she was, however, I kept my camera off as I didn't want her to see me. She was no longer that beautiful woman I once knew, she looked worn out and aged. She tried to apologize, but I told her it would be brief. The sum of your actions defines who you are. You made a decision by overriding me, something you knew I didn't agree with. You confuse my love with obedience, and that's something I won't allow. I'm living what I promised you, traveling, but I'm doing it alone. Maybe by this time, we would be expecting a child because patience is a virtue that is cultivated. Valentina has not passed away, and I doubt she will anytime soon. I won't give you the divorce, even if you try, you'll carry that on your conscience forever. As for me, I haven't met anyone, nor will I. I guess actions have consequences, you reap what you sow, I am reaping mine, and you are reaping yours. After that, I heard Alina break down in tears, and I ended the call. Currently, I live in Montreal, recovering from my past life. Since then, I haven't heard from her again. That was around 2019. By 2020, the world shut down, and dates blurred. It sounds like fiction, but I wish it wasn't so. I apologize for the lengthy story, I'd like to know your opinion. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If you really like our videos, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day.